Hello, welcome to another Looney Tunes review video. If you are new to the channel, make sure you subscribe to follow my journey to review all 1000 classic Looney Tunes shorts and give this video a like as well. So this is a review for the Ducktators, released in 1942. It's the 376th in the series, and it's directed by Norm Macade. You can find this on the Looney Tunes Golden Collection Volume 6 DVD set. It's in the public domain, so I'll play it for you after this review. In case you haven't seen it, I'm just doing this for consistency's sake, but this is where we see the birth and rise of Hitler and the Axis powers, but done through animals on a farm. And again, you can see this at the end of the review. First up, you're going to see the highlights of the audio commentary I did of this one with my good friends Lou Genocide and Steph Stilley, and you can see the full commentary. It's still up on the channel as this is in the public domain. And then after that, you're going to get some new insights from me. So without further ado, let's get into it. With me today to watch this very politically incorrect cartoon is Steph Stilley and Blue Genocide. Say hi, guys.
Hey, everybody.
Here's a funny gag involving the Father Time and all that. So, yeah, this is a reference to Hitler being... he was a painter. He was an artist at one stage, and and his work was competent. I have seen it, but obviously, things went in a different direction for him. And it's always amusing to hear Mel Blanc just rant on just gibberish like he would in a few of these cartoons as Hitler.
It's worth pointing out. It's worth pointing out that the whole gibberish thing with Hitler thing started with Charlie Chaplin with The Great Dictator that came out 2 years before this.
Yeah, a great
you can
movie.
tell the staff really got a kick out of those scenes.
Well, I was just gonna say there's also the Three Stooges short "You Nutsy Spy," where they don't use gibberish, but they use it came out before the Charlie Chaplin film, but they don't use gibberish. Right, yeah. They actually use a form of Hebrew.
Apparently, Malcolm Maltese, the writer at the studio, voiced Mussolini here. So, yeah, it was interesting choice. So I do like his weird Italians, like exaggerated, and the animation here too. It's pretty good, pretty solid. Look at that.
Yeah, this cartoon feels more like a Disney short than a Warner Brothers cartoon, at least for like a wartime cartoon for me.
Norm's pretty cinematic in some of these shots too. Like he's really starting to find his stride as director, which as we all know, got cut short because he got drafted to the army. And there's Roosevelt. I actually didn't realize this was a Roosevelt sort of caricature in the beginning, but no, apparently it's Roosevelt. So there you go.
Pretty sure this is the only time they really went on with like a full-on political satire. At times it kind of feels like the humor in this is something out of like a political cartoon, like a newspaper or something, with a lot of the writing.
Treaty Terror Upper, love that. And then it's just like, yep, let's just start fighting. That's it. See, another story, Animal Farm that uses the same idea with like farm animals, and it's all political and all that stuff. And we got Japanese Sandman being sung by Mel Blanc in a very awful stereotype. I mean, this is a caricature of Hideki Tojo, and the whole gag here is, of course, at the time Japanese would have just taken over islands and just because they'll just slowly take over the Pacific Islands.
There's one joke in this that I really am not okay with, but it was a different time.
Yeah, like the I Am Chinese, made Japan.
Yeah, I know why they made this.
This kind of reminds me of the Furious Face, the Donald Duck cartoon where you had the three marching in the beginning, which is a great cartoon.
Both featuring ducks.
Yes, because ducks make the best World War II analogies or something. And this short, it makes me so happy that they got Looney Tunes Golden Collection Volume 6 released, because that originally wasn't going to even happen. But the fact that Jerry Beck and others try to push it through, and they made sure they put on some of these really full-on war shorts in there. I'm so glad.
I also want to mention, I read somewhere that the children's book author, Phil Eastman, the guy who wrote Go Dog Go and Are You My Mother, in those books, I read that he was working at the studio in the story department, and I think he was working for Norm McCabe. But I'm not sure if that's true. If anyone out there knows, let us know in the comments, because I'd be interested about that.
And of course, we got your nice little Jerry Colonna reference in the end, and we're going to see a wonderful little, hey, if you want to see all this actually happen, if you want to see us win, buy war bonds. So this is, you wouldn't even see this cartoon released even a few years later after the war ended, because that's how topical it was. So yeah, see if you want to make this true, this is all you have to do. So this was specifically war cartoon and nothing more. So those were the highlights of the original commentary, and again, the full thing is up on the channel. But there were a few things that were missed in that commentary, so I wanted to add those here. I mean, first of all, if the narrator sounds familiar...
In a happy barnyard some years ago, a seemingly unimportant event occurred which was destined to vitally affect the future of that little world.
That is because it's done by John McLeish, and he was a voice actor at the time, and he does the narration here, and you would have heard him if you've watched a lot of the 1940s Goofy shorts, in particular the Art of series, like Art of Skiing and that sort of thing, and he has that distinct voice.
Crossing the bar. That reminds me of a poem by Tennyson, Crossing the Bar. Sunset and evening star, and one clear call for me, and may there be no moaning of the bar when I put out to sea. Don't you think that's a lovely thought? I do.
He also does the dove later on, that does the whole Franklin Roosevelt thing. Now, I think this is a brilliant parody of how the Axis powers came to be. Yes, it's a big oversimplification, I know. You can only do so much in a 7-minute short, right? But as a starting point, it's pretty good. And it's a shame, though, we can't really use this one now for educational purposes because of some of the gags in here. But for those of us who are able to put things into context, it's quite brilliant, and it's an interesting little time capsule. This short not only reminds me of De Fuhrer's face, like in the beginning when you have the Axis powers all marching, but it also reminds me of a 1943 Disney short called Education for Death, which is one of the more serious short subjects that they did, that dealt with how children in Nazi Germany were raised and became killing machines. And the whole idea of having animals depicting political figures, regardless of who they may be, that's a practice that comes from all the way from the 19th century, where you would have all these cartoonists in newspapers. And I'm sure you can guess which animal they would have used the most to depict certain politicians. I'll let you figure that one out. So looking at the short itself, so we'll go through it from start to finish, and going through the bits that I missed or perhaps want to elaborate further. So the title card, it's interesting because unlike in the short, which shows the swastika in the correct way, at least as far as Nazi Germany is concerned, but the swastika here, it's in the other direction, which is interesting because there are religions that actually use that symbol. So the quote-unquote reverse swastika. So yeah, I just thought it was weird that they did it here in this title card. And I like that visual gag in the beginning, that little chick that has a giant cigar. And we all know, back in the day, hey, I'm going to be a father, and the father would give out cigars as a present to people. That's kind of like a tradition that doesn't seem to be repeated much these days. Maybe in upper-class circles, I don't know. But I didn't give out cigars. Maybe because, I don't know, maybe I just didn't have any friends at the time or something. I don't know. I like how the egg is a black egg, and it signifies that it's like a bad egg. And the father then asks if it's a dark horse, and that's a reference to someone completely unexpected to win a political race. So we see Father Time in a rather Tex Avery type gag, but he says the line, "Oh, all right, but time does fly, don't it, Johnny?" And sure enough, I figured that was going to be a line, and that's lifted from the old-timer character in Fibber McGee and Molly, which was a radio show at the time. That wallpaper gag, that's clearly a reference to how Hitler was originally a painter. Doing the wallpaper is not quite like painting, but it's definitely a subtle reference to it. And if you've seen his painting, he was definitely competent, but he was nothing out and out special. It's kind of like those paintings that you would see, just those generic landscape pictures you might see in your doctor's office and that sort of thing. Does it take a lot of skill to make those? Yes, but nothing that makes it memorable.
Und vergiss nicht, you dopes, ich bin der aufgeblasene Fresh in Deutschland, in alle Europa, ja, in der ganzen Welt. My mama done told me.
Now, when we finally hear the Hitler screams, and Mel Blanc's done a few of these, and I love the way he does it, and I've always liked the idea of a Jew doing the crazed voice of Hitler anyway. It's just something really interesting about that, but I like how he's able to mix in complete gibberish or random German words, but then there'll be like a sprinkle of a Western word in there, so you kind of know what he's yelling about. You just have to listen for that one little word. And here he says at the end, "My mother done told me," and that's a line from the song Blues in the Night. And here I like how the narrator ends up flubbing a few times, so he's trying to figure out what the plural term for goose is, which, it's geese, but it's still a nice little touch. And John McLeish has that wonderful voice, and he was also, as I mentioned, a voice actor, so I wonder if that was him doing it as per the script, or if that was just something that was just added in, probably information lost to time. And of course, we got to have the goose as being the bird that's the most gullible out of all of them, right? What else are you going to pick for that? And yeah, Mussolini was indeed voiced by Mike Maltese, who was a Looney Tunes writer and perhaps is best known for his collaborations with Chuck Jones. And his voice is great here. And he was from the New York area, but it was from an immigrant family, so I'm guessing that he would have just drawn from his own experiences to come up with the voice of Mussolini here. And then we get a nice little gag saying the theater management apologizes to the nice ducks and geese. So a very clever and sly gag saying, hey, not all geese and ducks are bad, right? So we see our soldiers lined up saying the whole hail, I don't want to say that word too many times for this review, because this is going on YouTube and all that, but we do see a Rochester gag, so we see a little black duck, and that's just a reference to Rochester, who was on the Jack Benny show, and he would, talk in that tone, and in this case, it's Mel Blanc, and he's done that so many times by this point. But I think it's a little ironic, and I think that might be why he's winking to the audience, but there was some major racist policies against the people of color in Nazi Germany. I'm not going to go into too much detail on that, but yeah, there was a reason why Hitler was not happy that a certain person of color won a particular Olympic event. Definitely look it up. And it gets absurd. This short really gets absurd when all the lifeless objects even start saluting for some reason. But again, that kind of reminds me of the De Fuhreur's face, how he had so many lifeless objects in Donald Duck's home just saluting just because. And yes, we get a bit of wordplay here. I'm a sick Hitler too. And he's just really sick. Nice gag. Although people who were a lot more sickly didn't exactly have a good fate in Nazi Germany. So, yeah. Then we see Mike Maltese going on his little quote-unquote balcony rant, and he goes on about Tutti Frutti, and that kills me every time I hear it, by the way. And he makes his audience applause, and it's only one person applauding, and it's someone that's wearing a ball and chain being forced to applaud, which is a very clever gag there. And we get a nice little visual gag that, he wasn't really on the balcony. It was just a visual gag, of course. And we get a nice dad joke that I liked. The whole stormtroopers, which is what a lot of the soldiers in Nazi Germany were known as. But, of course, stormtroopers. What do you think's going to be around those troopers? A literal storm. Why not? Why not? So we see the dove, which is a parody of Roosevelt. And, of course, he's a representation of America in this particular scene, where at the time the US didn't really want to get into war. It was considered Europe's war, and so at the time it's like, oh, I hope there's peace, I hope there's peace. It's all about being hopeful. So that's what that's parodying. And speaking of parodies, I love the peace tree scene. And for me, first of all, you've got the SS as part of the is in the banner in the back, and you can see all those other birds are miserable, knowing full well that the situation they're part of is just not good, being neighbors to this particular tyrant. But it's a reference, and it's a great comical take on how Hitler ripped up the Treaty of Versailles, which was set up after World War I when Germany surrendered. And when he came into power, he would also make all sorts of peace treaties saying, no, I'm not going to invade anyone, I'm not going to do anything quite nasty. And of course, what does he do? he does it anyway, and that's reference to the fact we've got this beautiful tornado-style fight that we see, which is very well animated. Then the narrator says that someone from the West, another partner, came in to make a silly axis for himself. So that's a nice little wordplay there. We hear Japanese Sandman being sung by Mel Blanc with different lyrics. Of course, what else the other song they're going to pick for this Japanese stereotype that we will see? And that's a caricature of Hideki Tojo, who was one of the generals in the Japanese army. And the Japanese mandate bit is a reference to how the Japanese at the time were taking over many Pacific islands. And we then see I am Chinese, made in Japan. And at the time, Japan had actually occupied many areas of China. Look at this short again. I actually never really noticed how you have this dove holding up an olive branch, and then instead of having olives in the tree, it's just olive jars. I don't know, for whatever reason, I never noticed it before. I thought that was pretty funny. But the whole dove bit is brilliant. As I mentioned before, there was all this hope of peace, and US like, not going to really get into war, but they're like, oh, I hope there's peace, I hope there's peace. And they will show up their own defenses as well, just in case. And there was hope that the conflicts would sort themselves out. But since Pearl Harbor, and I guess that's represented by the dove being stopped all over, the dove, who does he go up to first? He goes up to the Tojo duck because, it's like, hey, this is for Pearl Harbor. Bang. And then he goes up to the other birds, and we get this wonderful fight scene with everyone, including those from the Gestinko Gestapo. I love that, right? And yeah, the timing is magnificent. We see a rabbit, which is kind of random, just got this mustache, and that's a reference to Jerry Colonna, who was on the radio, and he was a comedian at the time, and he's been referenced in many shorts by this particular point. And then the whole thing just kind of abruptly ends. You got the fight, but then you got the dove. I guess this must take place in the future because Father Time's involved with this, right? Where it's like, well, if you want this to happen, you got to buy yourself a war bond. And I do like the irony is that, as I mentioned, the US wanted to stay out of the war, but they went all in after Pearl Harbor. And the irony there is because of what the dove says, where he says, I hate war, but I just didn't choose to run. It's like, well, where were you when World War II actually started through Hitler's invasion of Poland? But anyway, whatever. So, as for this short, I actually think this is one of the better World War II shorts. It's a little raw in parts, but I think it's quite funny and interesting as a time capsule. A few things in here, well, it's harder to watch, like the Japanese stereotype, which, compare that stereotype to the other two Axis powers, and if you can't tell the difference, well, I don't know. But this one gets a 7.5 out of 10. It's entertaining. It's not like I go too short. I don't go for the war shorts specifically because they are such products of their time, but they're definitely fascinating to watch. But you be the judge. You can watch the short right now. But as for the review, that's all done. So thanks for watching, guys. And until next time, take care.
Happy barnyard some years ago, a seemingly unimportant event occurred which was destined to vitally affect the future of that little world. Mr. and Mrs. Duck were expecting.
Mama, was ist los? What's this, a dark horse?
And so time passed. Hey, bud, not so fast.
Oh, all right. But time does fly, don't it, Johnny?
Time passed. The bad egg grew to duckhood, and with artistic aspirations dreamed of brush and palette, but ended up with only the brush.
Did you know art?
His artistic efforts spurned, he soon turned to other endeavors.
Und vergess nicht, you dops, Ich bin der aufgeblosene Frosch in Deutschland, in alle Europa, ja, in der ganzen Welt. My mother done told me. Sing heil!
And there were some gullible ones who listened. Especially one goose, more gullible than gooses. Geese, mice, geese usually go.
That's all right. That's the old stuff, kiddo. He's a smarter fellow with brains, huh? Like me.
Sieg heil! Sieg heil! Sieg heil! Sieg heil! Sieg heil! Sieg heil, boy! I'm from South Germany. Sieg heil! Sieg heil! Sieg heil! Sieg heil! I'm a sick heiler, too.
E comincia contando! Sei tutte 9-10! Tutti frutti, and all kinds of whips of cream and a wall of nuts!
Come to so erase all thoughts of peace from off this place? Have they forgot 'tis love that's right, and naught is gained by show of might? Then from out of the west came another partner to make a silly axis of himself.
I a Japanese, a sapper man, sneaking on with a do. Just a Japanese, a sapper man, I'm a little crazy too. Ouch! Oh, sorry! Oh, so sorry! Oh, very, very sorry, Frieza. Oh, to apologizing like a Dickens. Oh, just a minute, Frieza. Oh, I am not a Japanese son of gun. Yeah, and I'm Mock Turtle Soup.
With spreading clouds of war, once more the Axis marched toward dreams of further conquest.
1, 2, button of my shoe.
3, 4, shut honorable door.
5, 6, see him over the sticks. 7, 8,
array them straight.
9, 10.
Begin again.
Mercy me, regretful sight. O branch of peace, forestall this fight. Kind sirs, change your warlike. war, but once begun, well, I just didn't choose to run. So I can point with pride and say, there's 3 that didn't get away.